The text message arrived at 2 in the morning. You're dead to us. We're removing you from Dad's emergency contacts. Don't come to Thanksgiving. Attached was a screenshot from their family group chat. The one I'd been deleted from months ago. Marcus had written, "The ATM finally ran dry. Good riddance." Derek replied with laughing emojis. Mom hearted both messages. And Dad, the man whose $70,000 spinal surgery I'd funded by destroying my retirement account while he vacationed in Alaska on a cruise that cost the exact same amount, said nothing. But the final screenshot was what made my blood run cold. It was from 6 months earlier. Mom's message read, "Remember, act grateful when she gives money. Make her feel needed. She's desperate for validation." "It's like taking candy from a baby," Marcus replied. "How much do you think we've gotten total?" Derek answered. "At least 200 grand. Maybe more." "She's too stupid to stop." That was the moment I realized my entire family had been running a coordinated con on me for 8 years, and I'd been the perfect mark. But before I tell you how I burned it all down and built something beautiful from the ashes, I need you to do something for me. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, if you've ever been the one everyone calls when they need something, but never when they're celebrating, hit that like button, subscribe, because this story gets wild, and drop a comment telling me if you'd have done what I did. Trust me, you're going to want to hear how this ends. Now let me take you back to where it really started. Not to that text message, but to 8 years before, when I made the fatal mistake of believing that love and money were the same thing. I was 22 when I landed my first real job at Morrison Financial Group as a junior analyst. The salary felt like winning the lottery. $65,000 a year. I remember sitting in my beat-up Toyota in the parking lot after getting the offer, staring at the number on the offer letter until it blurred. This was it. This was my ticket to everything I'd ever wanted. Financial stability, independence, and most importantly, the ability to finally make my parents proud. My childhood had been comfortable but never quite enough. We lived in a nice suburb outside Boston, had 2 cars, took occasional vacations. But there was always this undercurrent of financial anxiety that Patricia weaponized like a master. She'd sigh when opening the credit card bills, mention how expensive things were, how hard Dad worked, how lucky we were that they sacrificed so much for us. The subtext was always clear: we owed them. Marcus and Derek seemed immune to it. Or maybe they just didn't care. But I absorbed it like a sponge. This desperate need to prove I was worth the investment they'd made in raising me. So when I got that job offer, I didn't celebrate with friends. I didn't go out for drinks or buy myself something nice. I called home, hands trembling, thinking this moment would change everything. Mom answered on the first ring. "Eleanor, thank God. Your father needs to talk to you about something important." Not congratulations. Not even hello. Just need. The first warning sign, and I sailed right past it like it was nothing. Dad got on the line, his voice carrying that warm, slightly helpless quality that always turned my insides to jelly. "Sweetheart, that's wonderful news about the job. Really wonderful. Your mother and I are so proud. You've always been our smart one, our responsible one. Listen, I hate to bring this up now, but your mother and I have been losing sleep over something. The property taxes on the house are due next month. And with the economy the way it is, and my reduced hours at work, we're a bit short. Just 15,000. I know it's a lot to ask, especially before you've even started. But you're so good with money, and we raised you to understand family comes first. We sacrificed so much to send you to college, to give you the foundation for success. Without us, you wouldn't have this opportunity. $15,000. Before I'd even received my first paycheck. Before I'd even moved out of my college apartment. Before I'd even begun my adult life. I remember my mouth going dry. I remember thinking about the security deposit I needed for an apartment, the professional wardrobe I'd have to buy, the student loans I'd planned to start aggressively paying down. But louder than all of that was the voice in my head that said, "Family. They need you. This is what good daughters do. Of course. Dad, of course I'll help. Can it wait until after my first paycheck?" The relief in his voice was palpable. "You're a lifesaver. Eleanor, un absolutely saver. Your mother will be so relieved. You know how she worries. I said yes. Of course I said yes. What kind of daughter lets her parents lose their home? Except 3 weeks later, scrolling through Facebook while eating ramen in my new apartment that was barely bigger than a closet, I saw the photos. Mom and Dad on a boat. A really nice boat. With Marcus and his girlfriend Beatrix, champagne glasses raised. The caption reading, "Celebrating life's blessings with our wonderful sons." Our wonderful sons. Plural. Derek was in the photos too, tanned and grinning. They'd gone on a harbor cruise dinner, the kind that cost $200 per person. While I was eating 79-cent ramen because I'd just given them $15,000, I stared at those photos for an hour. My finger hovered over the comment button a dozen times. I wanted to ask how they could afford a luxury dinner cruise when they couldn't afford property taxes. I wanted to point out that their daughter wasn't in any of those photos, wasn't even mentioned in the caption. I wanted to scream. Instead, I liked the photos and commented, "Looks beautiful. So glad you had fun." That was the first brick in the wall of obligation that would eventually bury me alive. The pattern established itself with surgical precision over the next few months. Every time I thought I was getting ahead, every time I started to feel stable, the phone would ring. Marcus needed a co-signer for an apartment because his credit was shot. Derek needed money for supplies for his photography business. Mom needed help with groceries because Dad's hours had been cut again. Even though I'd seen him post about his golf game 3 times that week, the requests were never framed as requests. They were presented as emergencies, as desperate situations where I was the only solution, and they always came with the same emotional blackmail, the same reminder of how much I owed them, how family doesn't keep score, how someday I'd understand when I had kids of my own. By the time I was 24 and got promoted to senior analyst with a raise to 85,000 BIV, I should have been thriving. Instead, I was barely surviving. My apartment was in a neighborhood where I heard gunshots at night. My car was falling apart. I wore the same 3 suits to work on rotation, carefully spotting out stains and praying they'd last another season. Meanwhile, Marcus had upgraded to a luxury apartment in the city. Derek was buying expensive camera equipment, and my parents had just returned from a wine country weekend. The cognitive dissonance was staggering. I'd see Derek post photos of $100 dinners while owing me $3,000 he'd borrowed 6 months earlier. I'd watch Marcus talk about his new Italian leather furniture while ignoring the $10,000 loan I'd given him for his app startup that had crashed and burned within 4 months. And my parents treated every conversation like a financial planning session, where the only plan was how to extract more from me. Julian Hayes came into my life like a lighthouse in a storm. We met at a financial conference in New York, both of us escaping a particularly boring panel on emerging markets to grab coffee. He was a wealth management consultant, sharp and funny, and completely unimpressed by corporate posturing. We bonded over terrible conference coffee and a shared ability to spot bullshit from a mile away. We stayed in touch after the conference. Coffee meetups became dinner. Dinner became real friendship. Julian was the first person I'd met in years who seemed to actually see me, not just see what I could do for them. About 6 months into our friendship, we were having Thai food at this hole-in-the-wall place near my apartment when my phone rang. I glanced at the screen and felt my stomach drop. "Mom." I let it go to voicemail. It rang again immediately. Then a text. "Call me now. Emergency with your father." My hands were shaking as I called back. Julian's face shifted from casual to concerned. "Eleanor." "Finally." "Your father collapsed at work. We're at the hospital. They think it's his back. They're talking about surgery. Serious surgery. We don't know if insurance will cover it all, and we need to know if you can help." The fear in her voice sounded real. I stood up from the table, already mentally calculating how much I had in savings. "I'm coming right now." "Which hospital?" No. Don't come. It's too far, and visiting hours are almost over. We just need to know you're there for us. Financially, this could be 50,000. Eleanor. Maybe more." Something about the way she said it made me pause. Too rehearsed. Too quick to get to the number. "Mom. What hospital? I want to be there. We'll call you later with details. We just needed to know we can count on you. Family takes care of family." She hung up before I could respond. I stood there, phone in hand, mind reeling. Julian had come up beside me. What happened? I told him. His expression went from concerned to skeptical. Eleanor, if your dad just collapsed and is facing major surgery, why didn't she want you to come to the hospital? Why was her first priority getting a financial commitment from you? She's just stressed. She doesn't think clearly when she's scared. Julian pulled out his phone. What hospital system do they use? St. Elizabeth's usually. Why? He dialed. Asked for the emergency department. Gave my father's name. After a moment, he hung up. He's not there. They have no record of him being admitted today. The world tilted. Maybe they went to a different hospital. Maybe she was confused about which one. Julian's face was gentle but firm. Or maybe she's lying to you. I called my dad's cell. He answered on the second ring, sounding perfectly fine. Eleanor, hi, sweetheart. What's up? Dad. Are you okay? Mom said you collapsed. There was a pause. A long, dumbning pause. Oh, she called you already. I wanted to talk to you myself about this. I didn't collapse. Honey, I had some pain at work and came home early. But the doctor has been saying for months that I need spinal surgery. It's degenerative. We've just been putting it off because of the cost. So you're not in the hospital right now? No. I'm home. I'm okay. Just in pain. The relief I should have felt was drowned by a wave of betrayal so strong it nearly knocked me over. Mom said it was an emergency. She made it sound like you were in surgery right now. She worries. You know how she is. She gets dramatic when she's scared. But I heard something in his voice. Guilt. He knew exactly what Patricia had done, and he was letting it happen. I told him I had to go, ended the call, and looked at Julian. You were right. That night, Julian didn't tell me I was stupid or blind. He just said, they've trained you really well. They know exactly which buttons to push. The question is, what are you going to do about it? I didn't have an answer. Not then. Because doing something about it meant facing a truth. I wasn't ready to face my family, didn't love me. They loved what I could do for them. The surgery happened 3 months later. It was real. The need was real. But the way they went about it was a masterclass in manipulation. Patricia called me every day with updates. Each one more dire than the last. The pain was unbearable. Dad could barely walk. If he didn't get the surgery soon, he might lose mobility permanently. Insurance would cover some of it. But they needed $30,000 to bridge the gap. I was 26. I had $42,000 in my retirement fund. Taking out $30,000 meant penalties, taxes, and setting my retirement back by years. It meant the dream of ever buying a house receded further into fantasy. It meant continuing to live in my shoebox apartment in the scary neighborhood while my brothers lived in luxury. But it was my father's ability to walk. How could I say no to that? I withdrew the money. I handed it over. And then, 3 weeks after the surgery, I was scrolling through Facebook again. Because apparently I'm a glutton for punishment. And saw the photos from their Alaskan cruise. The one they'd taken 2 months before the surgery. The one that cost, according to a quick Google search, about $25,000 for 2 people. They'd had the money. They'd had the exact amount they'd asked me for, and they'd spent it on a vacation. I sat on my apartment floor and cried for 3 hours straight. Not just sad crying, but the kind of crying where you can't breathe, where your whole body hurts, where something fundamental inside you breaks, and you know it's never going to be the same shape again. Julian came over. I'd called him incoherent, and he dropped everything to get to me. He sat on the floor with me and didn't say I told you so. He just held me while I fell apart. They stole my future. I sobbed. They literally stole my retirement fund for a vacation. They looked me in the face and lied. I know. What do I do? Whatever you need to do. But Eleanor, you have to stop giving them money. You have to stop letting them do this. But stopping felt impossible. They were my family. This was what family did. Right family helped each other. Family sacrificed. Family put each other first. Except I was the only one doing any sacrificing. I was the only one putting anyone first. They were living their best lives on my dime while I struggled to afford groceries. The next request came within a month. Marcus needed money for a business opportunity. A friend of a friend had a cryptocurrency investment that was absolutely going to revolutionize everything. He just needed 20,000 to get in on the ground floor, and he'd pay me back triple within 6 months. For the first time in my life, I said no. The reaction was immediate and nuclear. Marcus called me selfish. Derek sent a long text about family loyalty. Patricia called crying, saying I was breaking her heart, that she'd raised me better than this, that she was ashamed of the person I'd become. The guilt was crushing. I lasted 4 days before I gave in and gave Marcus $15,000. Not the full 20. My one pathetic attempt at a boundary. The cryptocurrency company was a scam. The money vanished. Marcus shrugged and said these things happen. Seemed genuinely unbothered by the loss of my money. That was when something started to crack in me. Not break yet, but crack, like a windshield after a rock hits it. Spider webbing out from a single point of impact. I started keeping records. A spreadsheet. Every dollar I'd given them. Every loan that was never repaid. Every gift that was demanded. I didn't know what I was going to do with the information, but I needed to see it. I needed to understand the full scope of what was happening. By the time I was 28, the number was staggering. Over $150,000. Money that should have been my future. My security. My freedom. Instead, it had funded vacations, failed businesses, luxury goods, and day-to-day expenses for people who earned more than enough to cover their own costs. I showed Julian the spreadsheet. He looked at it for a long time, his jaw tight. Eleanor, do you understand what this is? This is financial abuse. This is elder abuse in reverse. They're stealing your life. They're my family. They're using you. There's a difference. I wanted to argue, but I couldn't, because he was right. I'd spent 6 years being an ATM with a pulse, and I was no closer to any of my own goals than I'd been at 22. Further, actually, because I'd raided my retirement fund, maxed out credit cards helping them, and had nothing to show for it except their ongoing demands and complete lack of gratitude. At 29, I got promoted to associate director. My salary jumped to $130,000. It should have changed everything. Instead, it made everything worse. Because now they knew I made more. The requests got bigger. Marcus needed money for another business venture. Derek needed help with a gallery opening. Mom needed money for home repairs that somehow never got done despite me sending $10,000. I was making 6 figures and living like I made minimum wage. I drove a car with 200,000 miles on it. I hadn't bought new clothes in 2 years. I ate the same rotation of cheap meals. My apartment was a 500-square-foot box in a neighborhood where I kept a baseball bat by the door. Meanwhile, Marcus drove a leased BMW. Derek wore designer clothes. My parents had a boat. An actual boat. The cognitive dissonance was making me insane. I'd lie awake at night, staring at my water-stained ceiling, wondering how I'd gotten here, wondering why I was the only one suffering, wondering why I couldn't just say no and mean it. The answer, I was starting to realize, was that I'd been trained not to. Every time I'd tried to establish a boundary as a kid, Patricia had crushed it with guilt and manipulation. Every time I'd wanted something for myself, I'd been made to feel selfish. Every achievement I'd earned had been immediately redirected to how it could benefit everyone else. I'd been groomed from childhood to be the family's financial safety net. And I'd played the role perfectly, until my 30th birthday. They planned a party. A big celebration at the Golden Spoon, this upscale restaurant downtown. Patricia insisted on it, said I deserved something special, that they wanted to honor me. I should have been suspicious. I should have known better. But some pathetic part of me still hoped that maybe, just maybe, this would be the moment they actually saw me. I bought my father a gift. A vintage Rolex I'd saved for months to afford. $3,000 I absolutely could not spare. But he'd always wanted one. Had mentioned it constantly when I was growing up. And I thought maybe this would be the thing that made him understand how much I loved him. How much I'd sacrificed. How much I'd given. I dressed carefully that night. A black dress I'd splurged on for the occasion. The first piece of nice clothing I'd bought myself in years. I did my hair. My makeup. I wanted to look successful. Put together. like their sacrifices had paid off, like I was worth it. I walked into that private dining room at the Golden Spoon holding that beautifully wrapped Rolex, my heart full of stupid, naive hope, and the first thing Patricia said was, "Well, at least you tried with your appearance. Though that dress is a bit tight. Don't you think? You've put on weight?" Marcus smirked into his wine glass. Derek didn't even look up from his phone. My father smiled at me. That weak, apologetic smile that meant he'd heard what she said and was doing nothing about it. I sat down, handed my father his gift. He opened it, and for a moment, genuine emotion crossed his face. His eyes got watery. He hugged me, said it was too much, said he didn't deserve it. And for just a second, I thought maybe this would be okay. Then Marcus leaned over, looked at the watch, and whistled. Must be nice having no kids. No responsibilities? Just money to burn on whatever you want. Derek laughed. Some of us have priorities. Some of us just have paychecks and no one to spend them on. Patricia reached over and patted my hand. Don't listen to them. Dear, though they do have a point, a woman your age should be thinking about settling down. Having a family? No wonder you have money to spend on expensive gifts. No husband to support. No children to provide for. Though I suppose some women are just meant to be alone. Not everyone is cut out for real relationships. The words hit like physical blows. Every insecurity I had. Every fear. Every wound. She'd found them all and twisted the knife with surgical precision. I tried to order wine. Something nice to salvage the evening. The server brought the wine list. I selected a Cabernet, a 2018 vintage that was expensive but not absurdly so. Patricia immediately cut in. Are you sure you want that one? Eleanor, you don't really have a refined palate for wine. Why don't you let Marcus choose? He's been taking sommelier classes. Marcus hadn't been taking sommelier classes. Marcus could barely tell red wine from white, but he puffed up with importance and ordered something twice as expensive, then made a show of tasting it and pronouncing it acceptable. I sat there, watching this performance, feeling something cold settle in my chest. Then the gifts came out. Derek gave Dad a tie. A cheap tie. Maybe $20 from a department store. Still in the generic store wrapping. Marcus gave him a frame. An empty frame. With a promise that he'd fill it with a family photo once we all took one together. My $3,000 Rolex sat on the table like an accusation. Patricia leaned in close to me, her voice low enough that only I could hear. You know why you buy such expensive gifts? Don't you? You're trying to purchase love. Trying to buy your way into being important. But money can't make up for being fundamentally unlikable. Eleanor, money can't fix the fact that you're cold and selfish and no one really wants you around except for what you can provide. I felt something in me die. Yes, Dee. Years of trying. Years of giving. Years of hoping. And this was what it got me. Public humiliation and private cruelty. The dinner continued. I moved food around my plate. Not tasting anything? They talked around me. Not to me. Marcus complained about his job. Derek talked about his latest creative project. Patricia held court like a queen, and my father sat there nodding, agreeing, never once defending me or acknowledging what was happening. Then came dessert and the bill. The server brought it on a small tray, discreetly placed near the center of the table. Everyone suddenly found something fascinating to look at. The ceiling, their phones, their empty dessert plates. Anywhere but the bill. Finally, Patricia sighed dramatically. Well, I suppose since Eleanor makes the most money, she should handle this. It's only fair. Those of us with families have so many expenses, but someone who lives alone in a tiny apartment shouldn't mind covering a nice family dinner. Something crystallized in that moment. A clarity so perfect it was almost beautiful. I looked around the table at these people who I'd given everything to, who I'd sacrificed for, who I'd loved desperately and completely. And I saw them for what they really were. Users, manipulators, emotional vampires who would drain me dry and then complain I didn't give enough blood. I stood up. My chair scraped against the floor with a sound that cut through their chatter. They all looked at me, startled. You're right, I said, my voice steady and cold. I should handle the bill. So here's what I'm going to do. I pulled out my wallet, counted out enough cash to cover my meal and my father's, and placed it on the table. Then I looked directly at Patricia. I'm done. I'm done being your ATM. I'm done being your emotional punching bag. I'm done sacrificing my future for people who see me as nothing more than a bank account with legs. I'm done pretending this is what family looks like. Patricia's face went white, then red. You ungrateful little bitch. After everything we've done for you, after we raised you, sacrificed for you, gave you every opportunity. You mean after you trained me to believe my only value was what I could give you, after you spent my retirement fund on a cruise, after you lied about Dad's surgery being an emergency, after you took over $200,000 from me and never once said thank you. Marcus stood up. You're being dramatic. This is ridiculous. Is it? Let me tell you what's ridiculous. What's ridiculous is that I make over $100,000 a year, and I live in a shithole apartment because I've been funding your lifestyle. What's ridiculous is that you drive a BMW you can't afford while I drive a car held together with duct tape and prayers. What's ridiculous is that Dad is wearing a $3,000 watch. I bought him while wearing a $20 tie. You couldn't be bothered to wrap properly. Derek jumped in. You chose to help us. No one forced you. You're right. I chose. Past tense. I'm done choosing. From this moment forward, you're on your own. No more loans. No more bailouts. No more emergency funds. Figure it out yourselves like adults. Patricia stood, her face twisted with rage. If you walk out that door, you're not welcome in this family anymore. You'll be dead to us. I picked up my purse, looked her right in the eye, and smiled. It was not a nice smile. Good. I've been dying for years under your thumb. It'll be a relief to make it official. I walked out of that restaurant and didn't look back. Behind me, I could hear Patricia screaming, Marcus shouting, Derek saying something about what an embarrassment I was. I didn't care. I walked through the restaurant, past staring diners, past the concerned hostess, out into the cool night air. I stood on the sidewalk, breathing hard, shaking from head to toe. My phone started buzzing immediately, call after call. I pulled it out, looked at the screen, and then did something I should have done years ago. I blocked all of them. Mom, Marcus, Derek. One by one, I blocked their numbers. Then I went into my Facebook settings and blocked them there too. Instagram, email, every avenue they had to reach me, I shut down. Then I called Julian. I did it. I actually did it. Did what? I cut them off. All of them. I walked out. There was a pause. And then Julian's voice came through warm and proud. How do you feel? I took a breath, assessed the chaos of emotions swirling inside me. Fear, guilt, anger, and underneath all of that, something I hadn't felt in years. Free, I whispered. I feel free. The next morning, I woke up to 73 missed calls and hundreds of texts. I didn't look at them. I got up, made coffee, and sat down with my laptop. I opened my spreadsheet, the one with every dollar I'd given them. Then I opened a new document and started writing. Every lie, every manipulation, every time they'd used me. I documented it all with dates, amounts, proof. I didn't know what I was going to do with it yet, but I knew I needed it documented. I needed proof that I wasn't crazy, that this had really happened, that I had every right to feel the way I felt. Then I did something wild. I went online and booked a trip to Italy, 2 weeks in Tuscany, staying in a villa I'd fantasized about for years. It cost $6,000. I didn't have $6,000. I put it on a credit card and felt no guilt. None at all. For the first time in 8 years, I was spending money on myself, on something I wanted, on something that would bring me joy instead of obligation. The messages kept coming. I started reading them, and they were predictable. First came anger. Patricia sent voicemails so vitriolic, I had to delete them after 30 seconds. Marcus sent emails, threatening legal action for the money he claimed I owed him. Money he'd borrowed and never paid back. Now somehow transformed into money I'd stolen from him. Derek showed up at my apartment building. I watched from my window as he banged on the door downstairs until a neighbor threatened to call the police. Then came the bargaining. Patricia sent a 5-page letter that arrived in my mailbox 3 days later. It was a masterpiece of manipulation. She was sorry if she'd hurt my feelings. She didn't mean to upset me. Family disagreements were normal. But surely I understood that they needed me. Dad's health was fragile. Marcus was struggling. Derek was just trying to build his career. How could I abandon them in their time of need? She closed with, "I raised you better than this." I read the letter twice, looking for any acknowledgement of what they'd actually done. Any real apology. Any recognition that their behavior had been wrong. There was nothing. Just more manipulation disguised as reconciliation. I tore the letter into tiny pieces and threw it away. The calls continued for weeks. I didn't answer. They tried calling from different numbers. I didn't answer those either. They tried to reach me through my email at work. I set up filters to automatically delete anything from them. Then came the social media campaign. Patricia posted on Facebook about how her daughter had abandoned her family. She didn't name me directly, but anyone who knew our family knew exactly who she meant. The post was carefully worded to paint her as the victim. A mother with a sick husband, struggling sons, and a wealthy daughter who'd turned her back on all of them. The comments poured in. Family friends expressing shock and disappointment. Distant relatives taking Patricia's side. A few people who knew me tried to defend me, but they were drowned out by the chorus of condemnation. I was selfish. I was heartless. I was everything Patricia had always said I was. I felt the pull of that guilt, that trained response to fall in line and apologize. But then I thought about the spreadsheet, about the $200,000, about the retirement fund I'd raided, about living in poverty while they lived in comfort on my money, and I thought, let them talk. Let them think what they want. They don't know the truth. And I don't owe them an explanation. But Alicia knew. Alicia was my cousin, Dad's sister's daughter. We'd never been particularly close, but she'd always been kind to me in a distant way. A week after Patricia's Facebook post, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. "Eleanor, this is Alicia. I need to talk to you. It's important. Please call me." He hesitated. This could be another trap. Another manipulation. But something in the message felt different. I called. "Eleanor. Oh my God. I'm so glad you called back." Alicia sounded genuinely distressed. "I need to send you something. I was added to a family group chat a few months ago. I thought it was just, family stuff. But after seeing your mom's post, I went back and read through the messages. Eleanor, it's bad. Really bad." "What do you mean?" "They were planning this. All of it. Marcus and Derek were strategizing about how to get money from you. Your mom was coaching them on what to say. There are messages about making up emergencies, exaggerating situations, playing on your guilt. It's all there. I'm sending you screenshots right now." My phone started buzzing with incoming images. I sat down on my couch, feeling lightheaded, and started scrolling through them. Message after message. Marcus asking Patricia how to approach me about his business idea. Patricia responding with detailed scripts about how to make it sound urgent and important. Derek asking how much he should ask for his gallery. Patricia suggesting he double the amount because Eleanor always negotiates down. There were messages about my father's surgery. Derek writing, "How much do you think we can get her for? The insurance is covering most of it, so we could probably keep some for the tax bill." Marcus responding, "Ask for 50 and settle for 30. Tell her it's life or death." My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped the phone. They'd planned it. All of it. Every emergency. Every crisis. Every disparity plea. It had all been coordinated manipulation. But the worst message was from Patricia. Sent the day before my birthday dinner. "Make sure to remind E that she's got no husband or kids, so she has plenty of money to spare." Hit the lonely angle hard. She's sensitive about being single. Marcus bring up the watch thing. So she feels obligated to spend big as Derek, keep it light but dismissive. She'll try harder if she thinks you're not impressed. And Robert, do not defend her no matter what I say. United front. They'd planned my humiliation. Scripted it. Rehearsed it. The cruelty wasn't spontaneous. It was deliberate. I called Alicia back. "Thank you. Thank you for showing me this. Eleanor, I'm so sorry. I had no idea this was happening. If I'd known sooner, I would have said something. What they did to you, it's not okay. It's abuse. I know. I'm starting to understand that. What are you going to do? I looked at the screenshots. At the undeniable evidence of their conspiracy against me. I don't know yet. But I'm not going to let them get away with it. The next day, I went to see a lawyer. Rebecca Martinez specialized in family law and elder abuse cases. I brought my spreadsheet. Alicia's screenshots. Bank statements. Everything. She reviewed it all with an increasingly grave expression. Ms. Vance, what happened to you is called financial exploitation by family members. It's more common than people think, and it's incredibly difficult to prosecute because the victims usually won't press charges. Are you willing to take action? What kind of action? You could file for repayment of the loans with interest. It would be a civil case. But with this documentation, you have a strong claim. You could also file a police report for fraud regarding the surgery situation, since they misrepresented the financial need. At minimum, you should send formal demand letters requesting repayment. I thought about it. Did I want to take my family to court? Did I want to make this a legal battle? The old Eleanor would have said no. Would have been horrified at the thought. Would have worried about what people would think. About burning bridges. About being the bad guy. But I wasn't that Eleanor anymore. Let's start with demand letters. Formal. Legal. Documented demand for repayment of all loans with a deadline. If they don't respond, we escalate. Rebecca drafted the letters. They were beautiful in their stark professionalism. No emotion. No accusations. Just facts. Dates. Amounts. Terms. And a demand for repayment within 30 days. We sent them certified mail to Marcus, Derek, and my parents. The response was immediate and predictable. Marcus called me from a new number, screaming about betrayal. Derek sent an email calling me a monster. Patricia left a voicemail saying I was dead to her, that she'd never had a daughter, that I was the worst mistake of her life. I saved all of it. Every threatening message. Every abusive call. Every piece of evidence that showed their true nature. Then Derek made his stupidest mistake yet. He started a GoFundMe campaign. Family destroyed by selfish daughter needs help. The description was fiction. According to Derek's version of events, I was a wealthy financial executive who'd promised to support my family and then cruelly withdrew all help, leaving my disabled father without medical care, my struggling brothers without jobs, and my mother in despair. He included photos of my parents looking sad and worn, Marcus looking dejected, Derek himself looking soulful and betrayed. The campaign asked for $50,000 to help this family survive their daughter's abandonment. He promoted it on social media, shared it in family groups, sent it to everyone he knew. And people donated. Within 2 days, he'd raised almost $4,000 from well-meaning strangers who believed his lies. I let it run for exactly 48 hours. Then I filed a fraud report with GoFundMe. I provided them with my legal demand letters, Alicia's screenshots of their planning messages, bank statements showing the money I'd actually given them, and Rebecca's legal opinion on the situation. I included proof that my father was not disabled and was in fact on Medicare with supplemental insurance that covered his needs. I showed that Marcus and Derek both had jobs and income. I demonstrated that every claim in Derek's campaign was a lie. GoFundMe deleted the campaign within 6 hours. They refunded all the donors. They banned Derek from the platform. And they sent him a letter warning that fraudulent campaigns could result in criminal prosecution. Derek's response was to send me a series of increasingly unhinged emails. He was going to sue me for defamation. He was going to ruin my career. He was going to make sure everyone knew what a terrible person I was. He was going to destroy me. I forwarded every email to Rebecca. She read them, made a few notes, and looked up at me with a slight smile. He's making this very easy for me. These are textbook harassment and potentially actionable threats. Would you like me to file for a restraining order? Yes. The restraining order hearing was surreal. Derek showed up in an expensive suit he couldn't afford, clearly thinking he could charm the judge. Instead, the judge read through his emails, looked at the evidence of his fraudulent GoFundMe campaign, reviewed the screenshots, showing the family's conspiracy to exploit me financially, and granted my restraining order with a warning. Mr. Vance, I suggest you use this time to reflect on your choices. Your sister has documented a clear pattern of financial abuse and manipulation. These emails constitute harassment. If you continue to contact her, you will face legal consequences. Do you understand? Derek sputtered. Tried to argue. The judge cut him off. Do you understand? Mr. Vance. Yes. Your Honor. Good. Stay away from your sister. Leave her alone. Let her live her life in peace. That's not a suggestion. It's an order. I walked out of that courtroom feeling lighter than I had in years. 1 down. 2 to go. Plus Patricia. But the universe had its own plans for Marcus. 2 weeks after my restraining order hearing, I got a call from Beatrix, Marcus's wife. We'd never been close. She'd always treated me with a kind of condescending pity, like I was a spinster aunt, whose money was useful, but whose company was unfortunate. Eleanor, I need to talk to you about Marcus. I have nothing to say to Marcus. It's not about that. It's about the money. I'm filing for divorce. And I need to know how much he actually owes you because it affects the asset division. I met her at a coffee shop. She looked exhausted, older than her 37 years. I brought my documentation. She reviewed it in silence, her expression shifting from skeptical to shocked to angry. He told me you gave him this money. He told me it was gifts from his wealthy sister who wanted to help him succeed. It was loans. All of it. And he never paid back a cent. He's been lying to me for years. Her voice was flat. He told me he was successful, that his businesses were doing well, that we could afford our lifestyle. I had no idea we were in debt up to our eyeballs. I had no idea he'd borrowed and never repaid over $40,000 from you alone. I'm sorry. Don't be. You're doing me a favor. I'm taking him for everything in the divorce. And Eleanor, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for the times I was condescending to you. I'm sorry I believed their version of events. I should have known better. Marcus's life unraveled quickly after that. The divorce was brutal. Beatrix took the apartment, the car, everything. She also started talking to their mutual friends about his lies and debts. His reputation in his social circle crumbled. He lost his job when his employer found out about the restraining order and the fraud allegations. Worried about the liability, he had to move back in with our parents, which created its own problems, because my parents were struggling now too. Without my regular influxes of cash, they were having to live within their actual means. The boat got sold. The country club membership got canceled. The luxury groceries got replaced with regular ones. Dad had to go back to work part-time because they'd been counting on me to subsidize their retirement. Patricia was furious. She started making calls to extended family, painting herself as the victim of a cruel daughter. Some people believed her. But Alicia had been busy too, quietly sharing the truth with key family members, showing them the screenshots, explaining what had really happened. The narrative started to shift. It was around this time that Patricia made her biggest tactical error. She reached out to a local news station with a story about elder financial abuse. She wanted to do an interview about how her successful daughter had cut off her aging parents, leaving them to struggle. The producer who took her call was Sophia Chen. Sophia was young, hungry for good stories, and eager to expose injustice. She set up a preliminary interview with Patricia to gather information. Patricia performed beautifully. She cried on cue. She talked about her ailing husband, her struggling sons, her heartless daughter, who'd turned her back on the family. She painted a picture of a wealthy executive who'd abandoned her working-class parents out of pure selfishness. Sophia listened, took notes, and then said, "I'd like to get your daughter's side of the story too." For balance, Patricia's face tightened. "She won't talk to you. She's too ashamed of what she's done." "Let me try anyway. What's her name and contact information?" Patricia reluctantly provided my name and workplace. Sophia did her homework. She looked me up, found my professional profile, and reached out through LinkedIn. We met at the same coffee shop where I'd met Beatrix. Sophia was direct. "Your mother contacted my station with a story about elder financial abuse. She claims you cut her off financially and abandoned your family. I want to hear your side." I should have been scared. Instead, I was calm, I'll tell you my side. But I need you to see the evidence first. I gave her everything. The spreadsheet, the bank statements, the legal demand letters, the screenshots of the family planning their manipulation, the fraud reports, the restraining order. All of it. Sophia's expression changed as she read. Her journalistic skepticism gave way to genuine shock. This isn't a story about an ungrateful daughter. This is a story about systematic financial abuse. Yes. Would you be willing to go on camera, tell your story publicly? I thought about it. Going public meant exposure. It meant opening myself up to judgment and criticism. It meant making something private very, very public. But it also meant the truth getting told. It meant other people in similar situations seeing that they weren't alone. It meant my family couldn't control the narrative anymore. Yes, I'll do it. The segment that aired 2 weeks later was called When Family Becomes Fraud: The Hidden Epidemic of Adult Children as ATMs. Sophia did a masterful job. She interviewed me with my face blurred and my voice altered to protect my identity. But the story was clear. She showed graphics of the money I'd given over 8 years. She interviewed financial experts about the long-term impact on retirement planning. She talked to a therapist about family manipulation and guilt. She explained the patterns of financial abuse in families. And then, at the end, she showed a brief clip of Patricia's original interview, the one where she'd claimed to be the victim. Sophia didn't need to explicitly say that Patricia was lying. The juxtaposition said it all. The response was overwhelming. The station's social media exploded with comments. Hundreds of people sharing their own stories of being the family ATM, thousands of people expressing support. The segment was picked up by other news outlets. It went viral online. And everyone in our extended family, everyone in our social circle, everyone who'd seen Patricia's Facebook posts painting me as the villain, now knew the truth. Patricia called me from a new number. I let it go to voicemail. Her message was desperate, angry, and revealing. You've destroyed us. Everyone knows now. Everyone is looking at us differently. Your father can't go to church without people whispering. Marcus can't get a job because people Google him and find articles about our family. Derek is a pariah. How could you do this to us? How could you humiliate us this way? You're evil. Eleanor. Evil and vindictive and cruel. We should have left you at an orphanage. We should have given you up. You've ruined our lives. I saved the voicemail, added it to my collection of evidence, and then I deleted her new number. That should have been the end of it. But Patricia wasn't done. She made one final, desperate move. She contacted my employer. She called Morrison Financial Group and spoke to someone in HR, claiming that I had stolen money from my family, that I was under investigation for fraud, that I was mentally unstable and dangerous. She suggested they should look into my financial dealings because she was concerned I might be embezzling from clients. This backfired spectacularly. Morrison took the allegation seriously and launched an internal investigation. They reviewed all of my accounts, all of my transactions, all of my client dealings. They found nothing. Because there was nothing to find. I'd been meticulous in my professional life, even as my personal life was chaos, but the investigation brought Patricia's call to the attention of Morrison's legal team, and Morrison's legal team did not appreciate someone making false accusations about their employees. They contacted Rebecca and Melavier. Together, they crafted a response. Morrison sent Patricia a cease and desist letter, threatening legal action for defamation and harassment if she made any further contact with me or my workplace. They banned her from all Morrison properties, and they made it very clear that any further attempts to interfere with my employment would result in a lawsuit. Patricia, faced with the prospect of being sued by a major financial firm with deep pockets and aggressive lawyers, finally backed down. The silence that followed was strange, eerie. After months of constant harassment, threats, and manipulation, suddenly there was nothing. No calls, no messages, no attempts to reach me, just quiet. I went to Italy. The villa in Tuscany was everything I dreamed and more. I spent 2 weeks doing absolutely nothing productive. I drank wine at lunch. I took long walks through olive groves. I read books in the afternoon sun. I ate pasta and gelato and didn't count calories or worry about money. I existed, alone and peaceful, and felt something in me start to heal. Julian flew out to meet me for the last 3 days of the trip. We sat on the villa's terrace one evening, watching the sunset paint the hills gold and purple. And he raised his glass to me. To freedom. To freedom. I echoed. And to never being anyone's backup plan again. You did it. Eleanor. You actually did it. You got out. I did. I took a sip of wine, feeling the warmth of it, the reality of where I was and how far I'd come. It cost everything. But I did it. What now? Now I figure out who I am when I'm not being what everyone else needs me to be. That process started as soon as I got back to Boston. I threw myself into my work with a new intensity. Without the constant drain of family drama and financial crises, I had energy for my career that I'd never had before. I started working on a major acquisition deal for Morrison, a complex merger that would either make my career or break it. 3 months later, I closed the deal. It was the largest acquisition in Morrison's history. My name was on the press release. My face was in the financial journals. Trade publications interviewed me about the strategy. And the board of directors, impressed with my work, promoted me to vice president. At 31, I was making over $200,000 a year. For the first time in my adult life, that money was mine. All mine. Nobody had a claim to it. Nobody was waiting to take it. It was just mine to use as I wanted. I went apartment hunting. Not for another shoebox in a scary neighborhood, but for something I actually wanted. I found a penthouse in a newly renovated building downtown. 3 bedrooms. Floor-to-ceiling windows. A view of the harbor that took my breath away. It cost more per month than I'd been paying per year at my old place. I signed the lease and felt no guilt. I hired an interior designer. I bought furniture that wasn't from IKEA. I chose art that spoke to me. Pieces from local galleries that I could actually afford now. I made the space mine, filled it with things I loved, created a home that reflected who I was and who I wanted to be. I started therapy. A recommendation from Julian, a therapist who specialized in family trauma and financial abuse. Her name was Dr. Michaela Ross, and she was the first person who seemed to truly understand the full scope of what had happened to me. You were groomed, she told me in one of our early sessions. From childhood, you were trained to believe your value came from what you could provide. Your family systematically conditioned you to prioritize their needs over your own, to feel guilty for having boundaries, to equate love with financial support. What happened to you was abuse, and breaking free from that takes incredible courage. Therapy helped me understand patterns I'd never consciously recognized. How Patricia had used my desire for approval to control me. How my father's weakness had been its own form of manipulation. How Marcus and Derek had learned from our parents that I was a resource to be exploited, not a person to be valued. How I'd internalized all of it and turned it into a worldview where I believed I had to earn the right to be loved. Dr. Ross helped me build new patterns, healthy boundaries, self-worth that didn't depend on others' approval. The ability to say no without drowning in guilt. It was hard work. Some sessions I cried for the full hour. But slowly, steadily, I started to heal. 6 months after I moved into my penthouse, I met Rowan Barnes at a charity gala. Morrison was a sponsor, and I was there representing the firm, wearing a dress that cost more than my old car and feeling, for the first time in my life, like I belonged in spaces like this. Rowan was there representing his architecture firm. He was tall, with prematurely silver hair and warm brown eyes, and when he smiled at me across the room, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Interest, attraction, hope. We talked for 2 hours, standing by the bar, oblivious to everyone else. He told me about his work designing sustainable buildings. I told him about finance and strategy and the satisfaction of putting complex deals together. We argued pleasantly about the best neighborhoods in Boston. We discovered we both loved terrible reality TV and considered it essential self-care. He didn't ask what I did for money. He didn't hint that he needed anything. He just seemed genuinely interested in me as a person. At the end of the night, he asked for my number. I'd really like to take you to dinner. Somewhere without rubber chicken and speeches. I gave him my number. We had dinner that weekend, and then the weekend after that. And then we stopped pretending these were casual dates and admitted we were seeing each other. On our 4th date, over Thai food at a little place in Cambridge. I told him about my family. All of it. The exploitation, the manipulation, the way I'd been used. The lawsuit threats and the restraining order and the news segment, I laid it all out, waiting for judgment. For him to decide I was too damaged or too complicated or too much trouble. Instead, Rowan reached across the table and took my hand. That must have been incredibly hard. I'm sorry you went through that. And I'm glad you got out. No questioning my decisions. No suggestion that I should try to reconcile or give them another chance. Just support. You're not going to run away screaming. He smiled. Eleanor. I'm 40 years old. I've dated enough to know that everyone has complicated family dynamics. Yours were abusive. And you had the strength to walk away. That doesn't make you damaged. It makes you brave. I think I fell in love with him in that moment. We've been together for 8 months now. He's never once asked me for money. He pays for his half of everything. Sometimes insists on paying for all of it. He supports my boundaries. He doesn't push me to talk about my family unless I want to. He just exists beside me as an equal partner. And it's the healthiest relationship I've ever had. 3 months ago, my father reached out. Not through the family. Not through manipulation. But a simple letter delivered to my office. It was handwritten, 2 pages. His script shakier than I remembered, but legible. Eleanor, I know I don't have the right to contact you. I know I've lost that privilege through my own actions and inaction, but I need you to know that I see it now. I see what we did to you. I see how we failed you. I'm not writing to ask for forgiveness or to request anything from you. I just need you to know that I understand. I've left your mother. I should have left her years ago. Décades ago. But I was weak, and it was easier to let her have her way. Even when that way involved using you, I told myself I was keeping the peace. I told myself it wasn't that bad. I told myself a lot of lies. I'm in therapy now. Real therapy. Not just going through the motions. I'm confronting the reality that I enabled your mother's abuse, that I stood by while she and your brothers exploited you financially and emotionally, that I took your money and your love and gave nothing back except weakness and disappointment. I can't undo what I did. I can't give you back those years or that money. I can't erase the damage. But I wanted you to know that I see it. I'm not asking for a relationship. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that you were right. About all of it. And I'm sorry. I'm so deeply, truly sorry. If you ever want to talk, I'm here. If you don't, I understand. Dad, I read that letter 5 times. I cried through most of them. Not because I immediately forgave him or because it erased the hurt, but because it was the first time in my life that he'd taken responsibility. The first time he'd acknowledged the truth without excuses or deflection. The first time he'd put my needs ahead of Patricia's. I didn't respond right away. I brought the letter to therapy. Worked through my feelings about it with Dr. Ross. She helped me understand that I could acknowledge his accountability without obligating myself to a relationship. That I could appreciate his growth without sacrificing my boundaries. After 2 months, I called him. We met at a coffee shop in neutral territory. Halfway between where he was living now. A modest apartment in Quincy. And my office. He looked older. Worn down. But there was a clarity in his eyes I'd never seen before. We talked for 2 hours. He didn't make excuses. He didn't try to minimize what had happened. He just listened as I told him exactly how much damage he'd caused. I spent 8 years funding everyone else's life while mine disappeared. I said, I pushed back my own retirement by decades. I lived in poverty while you and Mom took cruises. And you let it happen. You knew it was wrong. And you let Mom turn me into an ATM. Because it was easier than standing up to her. You're right, he said simply. I was a coward. I chose the path of least resistance. And you paid the price. I can't undo that. I can only try to do better now. We have coffee once a month now. It's not a full reconciliation. I'm not sure it ever will be. But it's something. A cautious, boundaried connection with the one family member who's shown genuine remorse and real change. He's working part-time as a bookkeeper, living within his means, attending therapy regularly. He's building a life without Patricia, and he seems lighter for it. He doesn't ask me for money. He doesn't hint at needs or create emergencies. He just shows up, drinks his coffee, and tries to build a relationship based on something other than financial transactions. It's awkward sometimes. Stilted. We're learning how to talk to each other without the old patterns. But it's honest. And that's more than we ever had before. Patricia, Marcus, and Derek still try occasionally. New phone numbers that I immediately block. Messages through mutual acquaintances that I don't respond to. Marcus tried to show up at my building once, but my doorman has their photos and doesn't let them pass the lobby. Patricia created a fake Facebook account to try to reach me, but I spotted it immediately and blocked it. Their tactics have evolved from anger to self-pity to attempted bargaining. Derek sent a message through Alicia 3 months ago, claiming he'd changed, that he was sorry, that he wanted to make amends. Alicia, to her credit, sent it with a warning. This feels manipulative to me, but I promised I'd pass it along. Do whatever you need to do. I didn't respond to Derek. Marcus recently sent an email from a new address, getting through my filters. He'd found God, apparently, and wanted to make amends. He was praying for me. He hoped I could find it in my heart to forgive. Also, he was in a really tight spot financially and just needed a small loan to get back on his feet. $5,000. He'd definitely pay me back this time. I deleted the email, added the address to my blocked list, moved on with my day. They don't get to have access to me anymore. Not my money. Not my time. Not my emotional energy. They made their choices. I've made mine. And I'm finally at peace with that. Last week, I had dinner at my penthouse. I'd invited Julian, Rovan, Sophia, my father, and Dr. Ross, who'd become a friend as much as a therapist. We cooked together, a chaotic collaborative effort that resulted in slightly burnt vegetables and perfectly cooked salmon. We laughed, told stories, argued about politics and movies and the best pizza in Boston. At one point, I looked around my dining table at these people. Julian, who'd seen me at my worst and loved me anyway. Rovan, who'd chosen me without agenda or condition. Sophia, who'd helped me tell my truth. Dr. Ross, who'd helped me heal. My father, who was doing the hard work of actually changing. These people who'd chosen to be in my life, who valued me for who I was rather than what I could provide. I felt something settle in my chest. Peace. Complete. Uncomplicated peace. My father caught my eye and smiled. It was tentative, grateful, aware of how much had been broken and how much work it took to build even this small bridge. But it was genuine. After everyone left, Rowan and I stood on the balcony, looking out at the harbor lights, reflecting on the water. He wrapped his arms around me from behind, and I leaned into him, feeling safe in a way I'd never allowed myself to feel before. You're quiet, he said. What are you thinking? I'm thinking that I spent so much of my life believing I had to earn love by giving everything away. And now I'm learning that real love doesn't cost anything at all. It just is. He kissed the top of my head. You deserved better than what they gave you. I know, I said. And I meant it. Not as an intellectual concept. Not as something I was trying to convince myself of. But as a truth I'd finally internalized. I know I deserved better. That's why I took it. Somewhere across the city. In whatever circumstances they'd created for themselves. Patricia was probably plotting her next attempt to worm her way back into my life. Marcus was probably nursing his resentment, telling anyone who'd listen about his terrible sister. Derek was probably still trying to figure out how to monetize his victim narrative. I didn't care. They were noise in the distance, echoes of a life I'd left behind. They'd had 8 years of my life. My money, my heart. They'd get nothing more. I'd close the ledger, balance the books. And in doing so, I'd finally figured out my own worth. It wasn't measured in dollars. It wasn't calculated by how much I could give, or how many people I could save, or how much suffering I could endure. My worth was inherent, unshakable. Mine, and no one, not even the people who'd raised me, I could ever take that away again. Some people say you can't choose your family, but they're wrong. You can't choose the family you're born into, but you absolutely can choose the family you keep. And I chose myself first. Everything else built from there, that's not selfish. That's survival. That's self-respect. That's the foundation of every healthy relationship I have now. So, here's my question for you. How much of yourself have you given away trying to earn love from people who see you as a resource instead of a person? Have you ever been the family ATM? The one everyone calls when they need something but ignores the rest of the time. And if you have, what finally made you realize you deserved better? Drop your story in the comments. Like this video if you've ever had to choose yourself over family expectations, and subscribe because I share more stories about reclaiming your life from people who don't value you. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is close the ledger and walk away. Sometimes saving yourself means letting other people fall. And sometimes the family you build is worth more than the family you were born into. Remember that.